this lecture, I want to pick up on my discussion of the genealogy of morals by Nietzsche, and return to our argument concerning the value of our values, the origins of our ethical judgments, and so on, and look at the question of, as I've stated it in the opening lecture, the paradoxical situation that our morality may, oddly enough, have an immoral origin. And so this is the argument to which we'll return. One of the points I didn't make about the genealogical method in the last lecture I want to make now, and it's very important. When we look genealogically at the Greeks as a type, or Christians and Christianity, Nietzsche uses a kind of typology where we don't look for who speaks in a document, but for, as it were, what motivates the speaker behind the document. So the hermeneutic question of who's the speaker and is he honest isn't really what Nietzsche wants, but to see what kind of type would say something like that. See, the standard philosophical approach to a text would be to look at the propositions and then to determine if the argument is valid, sound, and then if the speaker is sincere, and so on. Nietzsche, rather than looking at that, looks at the question, what kind of person would make an argument like that? What type of person would evaluate like that, rather than to look at the evaluation? That's another way to look at genealogy. You know, rather than to look directly at the evaluation, you look at the kind, characteristic, or type that would make it. So when I make a remark about master morality, it's about a certain type that speaks in these various evaluatory words. Or about Christian morality, it's about the type, or what human type speaks in these texts, okay? And again, that's a part of the suspicion of the method, of what it causes us to suspect. Well, we get on to some rather strong claims. The account of, as I say, of Greek ideals is that they are active, noble, you notice these various valorizing terms, but also they are somewhat childlike and naive. These are terms that imply that there should be more sort of a mendacious spirit in human beings. More malice wouldn't be bad here. In fact, throughout the text of Nietzsche, there's something like, and I don't want to trivialize it, but there's something like what Mick Jagger calls sympathy for the devil, that all really dialectical and intelligent human beings will have a sense for evil and some sympathy for the devil, or they will be just a little stifled and boring. And I think that's not wrong. Just a little sympathy for the devil won't hurt. In any case, let me look at a famous argument, if I can, here it is. In the first type that we've looked at, the Greek type, we will give it a name. We'll call it the active type, or the master morality. And here we have what I've called active force, which prevails over reactive forces. And reactive forces here would be things that stand in the way of the will realizing what it wants. Okay? Well, that's not much of a problem from that position in Greek society where myths, and by the way, we are in the realm of myth here. These types are, after all, not really sociological accounts, but in a certain sense, mythic accounts. In a certain, if you put enough weight on myth, and I want to put a heavy weight on that term. But anyway, this is the active type. One of the faculties that the active type is noted for is the ability to forget. And this is, again, part of Nietzsche's ongoing polemic with what might be called mere historicism, people who just wander idly through the relics of the past in search of a cultural treasure or whatever. In other words, for Nietzsche, the active person is willing to forget. And he contrasts that with memory, which you need in Christianity in order for the redemption story, for example, to make sense. You need to remember the sufferings of the martyrs. Remember. Memory plays an entirely different role for the master morality, the way Nietzsche puts it. They're strong enough to forget. So if insulted and you hit the master in the face, he hits you back, and that way he honors you, and then he forgets it, see? Because, first of all, if he turns the other cheek, he shames you by saying, well, you're not good enough to even fight with me. Rather, you hit him, he hits you back, and then you both forget it. It's the West Texas version of master morality. He hits you, you hit him, and then you've treated each other with dignity, you forget it, and then you forget it. But you don't turn the other cheek and then remember it. Mendaciously remember it. Ah, yes, you hurt me now, but later. There's the secret that will come in with Christianity, the but later. Now, I want to make this, I'll start with the typology, and then to read a brief portion of the genealogy where Nietzsche thinks he's uncovered, as it were, a text that's at the very heart of Christian morality for Nietzsche in this typological sense. The Christian type, Nietzsche says, is reactive. Calls it a slave morality. And in this type of morality, reactive forces prevail over the active ones. And here, you want things, but there is, as it were, principles and rules that stand between your will and fulfilling the will or the desire. And the extremes that we know throughout history that this is achieved are unbelievable, but their achievement has always had some perverse opposite character. And I'll try to use just one example here. And that's the monk who is going to think about the pleasures of the flesh no more. So the monk sleeps naked under a cloth that's rough, and as he denies that part of being human, of being a biological animal, as he denies it, does his body become less or more eroticized, I wonder? After years of sleeping under this rough blanket naked and denying the flesh, oddly enough, what comes in precisely is a new, sublime, and elevated form of the erotic. Everything is eroticized about the blanket and the body of the monk. No longer this straightforward sort of Greek physical act, but now an entire eroticized body. I mean, try to explain that the Victorian era produces novels like Wuthering Heights. I mean, the point is this, the denial of that power in reactive power doesn't mean that people really just say no and things become de-eroticized. No, Christianity perversely eroticizes the world in a brand new way. And in Wuthering Heights, I mean, the moment that you sin was the moment of that Nietzsche thought was interesting about Christianity, was that to break through and to sin gave a whole new dimension for him to human interest. It made the human being a more interesting species, sin did. Before that, we looked a lot like primates doing that, and afterwards it becomes this act filled with meaning across a whole terrain, subtle glances. Of course, all this may be gone now, right? It's just stuff you meet in the mall, same old thing as the Greeks, maybe, who the hell knows, or less. But anyway, during the Victorian era, you can imagine, that a glance, a touch, a glove, you read Kierkegaard on The Diary of a Seducer, and even though all the book is about him just thinking about it, and not even mentioning anything, the least bit pornographic, it's just, my God, you can't get that involved over one look, can you? And yes,